Okay, so I will just flip this off here. Hi, everyone. I am Riley, developer advocate here at Gadget. And today we're going to do a quick chat and learning session about checkout UI extensions and functions and how you can build them with Gadget. So the agenda for today, I'm going to do a quick, like 10-second Gadget refresher. Once again, we had a learning session yesterday with Mo. It's available on YouTube, so if you missed that, you can check it out. It will go through all the Gadget basics. I'm not going to touch too much on those today. I'm going to do a quick introduction to Shopify's checkout extensions, so that's UI extensions and functions, and how we can build them with Gadget. And then the meat of this is I'm going to go through a demo, build a pre-purchase app using checkout UI extensions and functions. It will include an embedded admin, but we'll get to that. And then finally, some time for questions at the end. If you do have questions during the session, feel free to enter them during the chat, and I will get to them at the end of the session. So here we go. So, quick Gadget refresher. If you look closely at this slide, you can see that half of this diagram was built by our designer, and the other half was added by me. On the left, this is our Gadget stack. So as you might know, Gadget gives you a hosted React front end, serverless Node.js backend, and Postgres database. So it's a full stack app development platform. That's great for developing e-commerce apps because we have our built-in Shopify connection. We're going to use all these pieces when we build the pre-purchase extension today. So I'll also walk through the tiers as we build. And then off to the side here, deployed on Shopify's infrastructure, we have checkout UI extensions and functions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this right box later. The important thing to glean from that is that you do need to use the Shopify CLI app to create your extensions and house your extensions, as well as deploy these extensions to Shopify's infrastructure. So the nice thing here, the key takeaway, is that Gadget handles your kind of full stack embedded app platform. Shopify actually hosts all of your extension code, so you don't need to invest in any sort of hosting platform. We'll move on. So what are functions and checkout UI extensions? Maybe a little confusingly, functions and checkout UI extensions are both just Shopify checkout extensions. And they're how you're going to modify the checkout now that the checkout.liquid has been announced as deprecated. So it's not, it's still going to be supported till August 13th, 2024, but the deprecation announcement has indeed been made. It's just a little snapshot from Shopify's docs. Checkout UI extensions are plus only, whether you're building custom or public apps. It's a unique set of front-end components and API that you're going to use to modify the checkout, and it is just the checkout UI right now. Functions are custom apps. For custom apps, they're plus only, or for plus merchants only. But you can use functions to build publicly available apps or public apps on the App Store. Functions are a little different from checkout UI extensions in that there are multiple functions APIs, and it is backend only. There's no front-end components. You do actually need to compile your functions down to WebAssembly or WASM. I'm going to use JavaScript in this tutorial, but if you want, you can write it in Rust. You can write it in assembly script. Language is kind of up to your choice. As I said before, all these extensions are actually hosted on Shopify's infrastructure. So I'm going to go through the deployment process at the end of the demo. A lot of these, how I recommend using extensions with Gadget is that we're providing custom input with metafields. And then you can actually use card attributes to pass data between extensions. So in the demo, I'm going to have my checkout UI extension, my function. I'm going to use card attributes just to pass a bit of data between them, just to show you how it's done. So I'm just going to actually leave my slides for now. Checkout UI extensions on Shopify site. Like I said, there are unique components. These are different than Polaris. They just have a slightly different API. Some of the layout components are a little tricky, like there's no size on the image component. You have to use the inline layout component to get sizing properly. There's APIs. If I go to the standard API, you can see it's just all the properties that are available to you on the checkout UI extension, as well as a set of React hooks, which are very useful for pulling information. So this is all one single API for your checkout UI extensions. If we compare to functions, you can see that there are multiple different functions with multiple different APIs. So it's a variety of APIs versus kind of a single larger API that covers some of your front end components. Okay. Now, how does Gadget help you develop these? Like I said before, if I flip back to this, our admin app and our database, if you need any custom logic for building your app, Gadget is going to handle all of that really seamlessly because it handles authentication. It's really easy to spin up an embedded admin app. So in our pre-purchase example, we're going to actually select a product and present that during checkout. And then you only need to focus on doing extension development with the CLI. So Gadget kind of handles all the boilerplate for you, and you can just focus on extension development when you're using a Gadget app to do extension development. So I'm going to just jump into the demo. That was my quick little preamble. This is what we're going to be building. It's just a checkout extension. And when we add it to the cart, we will use a function to apply a discount. The discount will not be applied if we just add the item to the cart without going through the extension. So that's how we're going to use cart attributes. I will dive right into it. So I'm going to create my new Gadget application. Here we go. I'll call it checkout. Oh, already used. Checkout extension demo. 2. Perfect. So when I create my new Gadget app, I do get my hosted Postgres database, Node backend, and React front end. The very first thing I'm going to do is just connect to Shopify. You have to use a partners connection when you're doing app extension development. It's listed right here. It also gives you access to embedded front end. So we always recommend you connect through the partners dashboard. I'm just going to go ahead and create an app. 2. Perfect. And I will copy my client ID and secret back over to Gadget. This is just setting up the Shopify connection. On this page, I'm going to select what Shopify API scopes and models I want to give my Gadget app access to. So in this case, because we're just building a pre-purchase extension, I just need to be able to actually read products. The extension itself is going to handle writing the product to the cart or adding the product to the cart, so I don't need to worry about doing that in Gadget. And I'm going to import the Shopify product data model. You can always edit this connection later, so if you are building your own extension, you need additional scopes, you can go ahead and edit it. I'm actually going to edit it a little later in the tutorial as well. And then I'm just going to copy this app URL and redirection URL back to my partner dashboard. Perfect. I will save. And the last thing I need to do to connect my Gadget app to Shopify is install my app on a store. So this is one of my development stores. I do have the checkout extensibility preview enabled, which I believe right now gives me access to some additional functions APIs that aren't quite promoted to main yet. And I will install. So Gadget handles all your authentication for you. You don't need to write any auth code. You can just install right out of the box. And perfect. So my app is now installed on Shopify. This page is just a React template app that we generate for you. So if I flip back to Gadget now, we do have this little card that tells us what we just did. So we mirrored Shopify resources. That's our Shopify product model. We have registered for webhooks. So if I edit or create a new product, delete a product, Gadget's going to handle those webhooks for me, and my Gadget database will always stay in sync with Shopify. There's also a nightly sync to make sure that things are kept in line if a webhook is missed. There is that sync API that I just mentioned. I am going to do a sync shortly. And then there's our embedded admin front end. So that's what we saw in our admin here. And if I open the front end folder in Gadget, it's just shop page JSX is what is powering that. So that's fantastic. I am now installed on Shopify. the first thing I'm going to do is build a little admin app so I can select a product to be offered in my checkout. So I'm just going to sync data first. I'll go in and press the sync button. And this will just pull in product data from Shopify into my Gadget database. So if I go to the product model, click on data, I see that I now have product data available. You can also add some custom code to do a sync automatically when you actually install your app on a store. If you need that data, it's nice to pull it in automatically when you install. If you check out our documentation, we do have a sample on how to do that. So I'm all synced. Now I just need to actually build my front end app. Watching me type React code is about as exciting as watching paint dry. So I'm actually just going to paste over shop page JSX and then walk through this code. So if I go over, so I didn't have to refresh this page. This is obviously different than what we were looking at previously. Gadget front ends do have hot module reloading, so I do get my app without having to refresh. It's a pretty normal development process. And I'm just going to walk through this page very quickly because this is a React page. I'm able to use React state just to handle the currently selected product and product options. So this is just a dropdown with my product information or different products available, and I can select one of them. Saving right now does nothing, but we'll get to that shortly. The interesting part in this page is how we're querying data from our Gadget backend. So when I synced this Shopify product model, it created some CRUD actions for me to use. So create, update, delete, as well as read. And all I'm doing right here is using a use find many hook, which is a hook provided by the Gadget Inc. React package to read my products from my Gadget database. I'm also using a use find first hook to read my Shopify shop model, and I'm just grabbing the ID. So when you connect to Gadget and when you're writing front end code, we actually automatically apply some shop tenancy for you. This means that I'll only ever be able to grab products that are in my shop, and I'm not able to grab other people's products. Same with the Shopify shop ID. I'm only ever going to grab my shop's ID, not someone else's. You can look in our docs for more information on that. If you go to settings, roles and permissions, the Shopify app users role is used for embedded app users, and we have these jelly files that are actually applying the filter. So you can go and look into that yourself. I just wanted to highlight it here. So here we're reading product data. Our hooks have 3 return objects: data, fetching, and error. Data will be my actual product or shop data. Fetching is just a Boolean I can use to display like a spinner or loading message. And I'm not going to use error in this demo, but you can use error to display, error handling and an error message. Once again, just some more React code. In this case, I'm just taking the data returned from my Shopify product fetch, and I am placing it into a new object and using my React state to set it to product options. So that is just populating my dropdown with my list of products. I have a callback that right now is just printing to the console. This is where we're actually going to need to write data, write my selected product somewhere. We're going to have to store that information and pass it into our extension. And then this is just Polaris code. So your front end comes automatically installed with Polaris or set up with Polaris. So it's really just a page with a primary action, which gives us that save button. And then the select component just has our product options, as well as our selected product and set selected product, which once again, that's just part of our React state. So this is a pretty simple front end app. I know I just copy pasted code, but it didn't take too long to write initially. So now that I can go ahead and select an app, like let's say I want to offer this collection snowboard Oxygen in my checkout. When I press save, I need to be able to do something. And as I mentioned in kind of my intro preamble, I actually want to save this product ID to a metafield because then I can easily pass it into my checkout extension as input to offer that product to shoppers. So I need to create an action, or I need a way that will accept that product ID as input and then save it in a Shopify metafield. I'm actually going to create a new action on the Shopify shop model. So I'll just go ahead and create a new action. I'm going to go ahead and call this save pre-purchase product. So this creates a new action on my shop model that I can then access in my front end. I'm going to add a code snippet as a success effect. And in this code snippet, all I want to do, and once again, I'm going to copy paste code, but I just want to save a passed in product ID to a metafield. So there we go. I've pasted code. We can see the first thing I'm doing is getting the product ID from the params object. So this high context parameter that comes with your serverless action or serverless function gives you everything you need to interact with your Gadget API as well as Shopify. And when you're defining custom parameters, I'm going to just open this full screen, it'll be a bit easier to see. Down at the bottom here, I've actually defined a custom parameter on this action, which will allow me to pass in a product ID, and it will be of type string. So whenever you need to pass in custom parameters that aren't already included on, for example, my Shopify shop model, I can go ahead and define custom parameters using module.exports.params. So this will pass in a product ID or expect a product ID. And then all I'm doing is using the connections object provided in our function. I am getting my current Shopify connection. And then this is just making a GraphQL request. So metafield set is just part of Shopify's GraphQL API. It's just how you're going to set a metafield in Shopify. And I am just creating a single metafield. I'm right now hard coding a key and namespace. So key is pre-purchase product, or my namespace is Gadget tutorial. I'm setting the owner to the current shop. So this will be a shop-owned metafield. It's going to be a product reference. And then I'm just setting it to the GID value for my current product ID. So it's just the product ID is the metafield value. So that's awesome. Now I want to be able to run this when I click save in my front end. Before I do that, I actually need to enable permissions. So by default, whenever you create a custom model or a custom action on an existing model, your Shopify app users role won't have access to it. So if I tried to hook up my action now, I get a permission denied error. So if I go in to my roles and permissions page, I can see I have my save pre-purchase product action defined here under my Shopify shop model, Shopify app users role. I just want to enable it. So now I'll be able to call this action from my front end. So now that I have allowed myself to run this action, let's go ahead and hook it up. I'm going to add a use action hook, which is the hook that is used to make non-write calls in Gadget. And I am just going to go ahead and copy a little snippet here, paste it in. Perfect. So here I'm using this use action hook on my Shopify shop save pre-purchase product action. Similar to our read requests, we get data, fetching, and error, and I've just aliased those to be slightly different names. And then we also get this save product function. So calling this function is how I'm actually going to trigger my action in my Gadget backend. So the next thing we need to do is just actually call save product. I already have my save selection action here, or callback. It's hooked up to my button already, so I really just need to go ahead and call save product. So what this is going to do is when I click save, it's going to check to make sure I have my shop data, which is really my shop ID that I want to pass in, as well as the currently selected product, so whatever selected in my dropdown, and it will pass it to my Gadget backend and store it in a metafield. So that's fantastic. It should be hooked up to our front end now. One more thing, I'm just going to add another field to my Shopify shop model just to make sure that it actually works. So I can go ahead and add a custom field. I'll just call it pre-purchase products. I'm going to store data from my metafield. My namespace is just Gadget tutorial. I'm going to go, oh, not private. I'm going to register it. And then my key, what was my key name? Just dive back into my action. My key was pre-purchase product. So let's go here. I will paste in the key, pre-purchase product. It is a product reference. Fantastic. So now if I look in my in the data page for my Shopify shop, I scroll to the very end, I see I currently don't have a metafield set, but if I go to my front end, let's select, let's Oxygen Snowboard looks good. If I press save, oh, I actually forgot to update my UI here. I'm just gonna make a small UI update so that it gives us a nice banner in the admin front end, make it easier to make sure it worked. Go to shop page. Just gonna paste some more code here. There we go. So all I added was this: when we get a save response, which is using that fetching or the data piece, it'll print a banner. We're also using the fetching Boolean just to disable the button so that you don't get a whole bunch of clicks. It just debounces it nicely for you. So here we go. So I'll try pressing save again. I'm going to refresh the page. So our hot module reloading does have, I believe, a 4-minute timeout. I took a little long to explain my action, so I'll just I'll give it a refresh. Let's select Oxygen, press save. There we go. So my pre-purchase product was saved. And now if I go to my Shopify shop, back to the data page, scroll all the way over. Perfect. I see I do have my product ID saved to my meta field. So I'm good to start building my extension. So that's kind of the Gadget portion, is that I've used Gadget to create an action and an embedded app, an admin interface that I can use to provide custom data to my extension. Now I'm going to start building the actual extension. So you do need to use the Shopify CLI app. I'm just going to go ahead and create one. It's going to take a couple minutes to spin up. I should have done this a little earlier, but that's okay. We'll go extension demo 2. I'm going to select node, and this will create a new Shopify CLI app for me. So like I said before, the Shopify CLI app provides everything you need to either build an embedded app as well as build and deploy your extensions. Because Gadget is already managing the embedded app for me, I'm actually just going to delete most of the created Shopify CLI app. So there's normally this top level web folder that it's installing right now. I'm actually just going to get rid of it and only use my CLI app to generate extensions. So we'll just give it a minute while it loads up here. Probably could have done this earlier. Like I said before, that's okay. I also didn't prepare any jokes for the time gap. That's on me. Okay, so my app is now ready. Extension demo 2. Cool. So I'm just going to open this up in VS Code. Extension demo 2. Perfect. So like I said, there's this web folder that we get normally. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And it's gone. Perfect. So now I can just use this CLI app to handle my extension. So let's go ahead and generate a checkout UI extension. Yarn generate extension. And there we go. I will select my partner's organization. I do not want to select a new app. I want to select the same app I used to connect Gadget to Shopify, just extension demo 2. That's really important. And then I'm going to select checkout UI, and I'm going to give it a name, pre-purchase extension. And I'm going to do JavaScript for this tutorial. So as you can see, an extensions folder was added to my CLI app here in VS Code, and it looks like that is good. So in the extensions folder, this is my checkout UI extension. There are 2 key pieces to this. There is a TOML file you can use to handle your extension settings. And then inside the source folder, there's an index.jsx. This is my actual extension logic and my rendered extension. So by default, it's just a banner. I'm going to go ahead and actually start my app. And we'll take a look at the banner, and then I'm going to modify this to pull in that product ID and display it in the checkout. So I do also want to select the same store I installed my app on. Otherwise, you get a weird mix match where things don't really line up. So the same store that you installed your Gadget app on. Perfect. I can open this URL. I'm just going to copy my checkout UI extension, flip back to Chrome here. And this will open my checkout, and I should see a banner. Perfect. So this pre-purchase extension here, this is my extension. This is just what Shopify is going to generate you for by default. Now let's go ahead and edit it. So there's 2 steps, like I said before. I'm just going to stop my dev app from running. 2 steps. The first thing I want to do is change my TOML file. So I actually want to import the metafield that was defined in Gadget. So Shopify actually gives us a couple examples. So I am just going to uncomment these. Nope. Perfect. And the namespace was Gadget tutorial. And my key was pre-purchase products. Awesome. So now this will bring in that shop-owned metafield that we defined, and it will be available as input to our extension. There's one other change I'm going to make. I'm just going to delete all this commented out stuff. I can define additional capabilities. And in this case, I just want to, I'm just going to copy and paste here, set API access to true. So this will allow us to make storefront API requests from our extension. And that's all we need to do for our configuration. Now we can actually build the extension. So once again, I'm going to copy and paste a bunch of code. Full disclosure, this is very, very similar code to Shopify's own pre-purchase extension tutorial. In their tutorial, they're just making that storefront API request to grab, I think, the first 4 products from the storefront. In ours, we're using the metafield to input a specific product that a merchant picked. So it's just a slight modification of their extension code. Let's flip back here. I'm going to walk through this extension code, especially highlight some of the more interesting parts. And then we'll go ahead and add a function, which will add a bit more to this file. So as I said, the UI checkout extensions have a very limited API. You can't use any HTML tags, no divs, spans, anything like that when building your checkout extension. So you have to use Shopify's components and their React hooks to grab data. So I'm going to walk through some of these now. There is a hook. This is included with Shopify's tutorial that will allow us to add this product to the cart. So when shoppers press an add button, the product that's being offered will be added. That's kind of an important part of the pre-purchase process. One thing that is different from Shopify's tutorial is this line right here. So we're using a use app metafields hook to actually pull in our pre-purchase product ID that we set in the admin app and sent to the metafield. There's just some React state defined here, defining like the product, some loading and adding states, as well as show an error. In this use effect, what we're doing, it's a pretty big chunk here. So we're using our pre-purchase product, which is our metafield, as input. And this query is just how we make queries to the storefront API. So like I said, in Shopify's example, they're just, I think, grabbing the first 4 products randomly from the storefront. In this demo, we're actually passing in the pre-purchase product ID. So we're going to grab a specific product. Now, I'm just grabbing the first image and the first variant. This was mostly just to keep our admin UI simple so that there's only one dropdown. It's pretty easy to walk through. You probably, if you're actually going to build this app, you probably want to enhance your admin app to select a certain variant, select a certain image, or upload a custom image. Gadget can handle custom images if you want to upload them. All this is doing, though, it will grab a random image URL as well as the ID and amount of a specific variant or the first variant. Finally, we just call set product, which is just saving this product information. So that's our variant image and product title to a piece of React state. There is some error handling going on here. So use effect, and this loading will just display a skeleton component when we're actually loading the extension on the checkout page. There is use cart line. So this is another one of those useful API hooks that will allow us to actually access the current cart contents. Because these are React hooks, it also subscribes to changes. So anytime that the cart changes, we will re-render the component and the logic will be rerun. There is a check if product variants can't be loaded, then show nothing. So by default, if you either encounter an error, or for example, below here, we check to see if the product being offered for pre-purchase is already in the cart. If that's the case, we just don't want to show the extension. So if you return null, that can be used as an escape hatch to just say, hey, do you want things either aren't working properly or I don't want to show the extension, return null, and it won't be rendered. Finally, when we get down to kind of the bottom of our UI extension, we just pull the images, the title of the product, and variants out of the product. That's, once again, our React state. And we get a renderable price as well as image URL. And then we just render our actual extension components. Like I said before, these are slightly different components from Polaris. I was building a custom extension myself and had just extreme difficulty trying to figure out how to size an image. The hint is that you use inline layout and define a column size. So that's actually my image size. It took way too long. Going through Shopify's tutorials was actually very helpful because it does show you these kind of edge cases. All we're rendering here is this is our product image, our product title, it's in a text tag, as well as the price. And then there's a button. It's just going to say add. And the interesting thing about the button is our on press state. So it's not, I guess on click was busy, so it's on press. And we're running an async function here. And this is where we're calling apply cart line change. So this is when when a shopper presses add, it will actually add this product variant to our cart. It will add 1. So that's our extension code. Let's go ahead and try it out. I'm just going to go ahead and start up my CLI app again. Perfect. I'll open up the console. Let's do this. So now instead of a banner, we should get a nice little pre-purchase offer. Awesome. So that is our pre-purchase extension right here. We did select the oxygen snowboard. So just to prove that it works, I'll change my pre-purchase to liquid, press save. I'll refresh this page. And there we go. So now we have our liquid snowboard. If I press add, it's added to the cart. So everything's working as expected so far. So that's fantastic. That is, in essence, how you can build a checkout UI extension. This is also all covered up till now. Gadget has a checkout UI extension, and that's all I've covered up to this point. So if you do want to go through these steps, we have step-by-step instructions written out. We'll have a video up later today on how to do this. But the next thing we want to do is add a function. So when I add this pre-purchase product to my cart, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it for now. I want to apply a discount to the product. And I'm going to go ahead and use, if I go into functions or the function docs, there is a product discount API. So this is what I'm going to use to just apply a discount to this product once it's been added to the cart. Now, there are a couple of use cases I want to consider. If someone adds the product to their cart just while they're shopping and not during the pre-purchase, maybe I don't want to discount it. So I want to use cart attributes to say, like, hey, when a shopper presses that add button in the checkout, then I want to discount the product. So I don't want to discount it if it's already in the cart. You could use a function just to discount the product in general. You could also do that through the Shopify admin. But this, we just want to apply a special discount when they click add. If you're actually building this app, you probably want to show the discount here as well. But I'm not going to do that just to show that the function is a separate piece. And it's applied once you actually add it to your cart. So I will go ahead and flip back. So we're going to modify the checkout extension demo to set a cart attribute that we can then pull into our function. So I'm going to go to the very top here. I will add another hook. It's going to be called use apply cart. Use apply attribute change. Perfect. So we want to import this hook. Similar to our other hooks, we can go ahead and define it. So I'm just going to do it under the cart line change. So there we go. That's apply attribute change. Works very similar to apply cart line change. And if I scroll down to our on press for our button, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this one. So right under where we apply our cart line change, I am just going to paste. Oh, copy didn't work. Save. Perfect. So now what's going to happen is we're going to apply our cart line changes to add this product to our cart. And then we're going to create a new cart attribute that will contain this variant ID. And we're just going to use that as input to our function. So let's go ahead and define our function now. So we're once again going to use our Shopify CLI. I'm just going to stop it from running. I'm going to generate another extension. And in this case, I'm going to do the product discount function, number 9 in our list. I'm just going to call it, let's call it pre-purchase discount. And like I said, your functions do have to be compiled down to WebAssembly. So Shopify has support for JavaScript or TypeScript, as well as Rust. I'm going to do JavaScript right now. If you are building a function that isn't as simple as the one I'm going to build today, Rust does perform, I think, up to 3 times better than JavaScript. So if you are running into a bit of a performance crunch because functions do have strict time and memory limits, you can look at using Rust, but in my experience, JavaScript has worked fine, especially for simple functions. So if I now go into my extensions folder, I have 2 pieces here. So pre-purchase extension was my UI or checkout UI extension. I'm going to go into pre-purchase discount, which is my newly generated function. Similar to the checkout UI, there's a couple different files that are interesting about functions. I have this input GraphQL file. This is where I define what the function's API input fields are brought into my function. And then in the source folder, there's an index.js. And this is where I'm actually going to write my function. So right now, by default, it just returns an empty discount. So I'm going to modify this a little bit. I will say, because functions are deterministic, so same input produces the same output every time, it is very useful to write unit tests. There's not a simple way to test your functions like there is with the checkout UI. So doing some unit testing is kind of the best way to do that, I've found. It's a little annoying. Otherwise, you have to deploy it, try it out in your checkout, and it's just a bit of a longer feedback loop. So you can go ahead and write some unit tests. I'm going to modify my input file first. So it defaults by accepting a metafield. Once again, if you want to pass in a custom value as a metafield to a function, that is the way to do it. I'm not going to do that in this tutorial, but our product bundle tutorial does use a metafield as input. I'm just going to go ahead and paste some changes here. So this instead will pass in our cart attribute that was defined in the checkout extension, as well as the lines available in our cart. And we just want our product variant IDs. So all we're going to do in our function is get our cart attribute, which is just our variant ID. We're going to see if that ID exists in the cart. If it does, we're going to apply a 25% discount to that product. So now I am just going to generate some types. So if I go to the package JSON in my function, there is this type gen script that I want to run. And what this will do is modify the API. So it just updates your types that Shopify generates for you, so that when you're actually writing your function, it is accurate to what you've defined in your input GraphQL file. So I'm just going to go do that now. Just going to go extensions and pre-purchase discount, yarn type gen. Perfect. So now we've generated our types. Go back to the base, and I can update my actual function code now. So I will just go ahead and copy this. I'm just going to, once again, copy paste, and I'll walk through it. So now all we're doing, we're grabbing that variant ID from our cart attribute. If it exists, oh, nope, that's not quite right. This will work. This will be fine for now. What I'm not doing right here is looping through the cart lines, but this will actually still work. The other way is just a little more robust. So this is if we actually have this cart attribute set, we're going to return a new discount. It is going to be a 25% off discount, and it will target this one single product. Now, if you wanted to make this percentage more dynamic, so you can set this in an admin app, for example, this is another good way where you could define a metafield as input, pass in that percentage to your function so that a merchant can actually set what the percentage discount would be. For now, I'm just going to hard code it to 25%. So now I'm going to go ahead and I need a way to run this function, or a place for this function to live. So because this is a product discount function, I actually need to create a new discount in Shopify so that this function code is run properly. And in order to create this new discount, I'm actually going to use Gadget. So I'm going to create a new action in Gadget to generate this discount so that my function is run. Okay. So normally what you probably want to do is add a code effect to the shop install so that every time you install, you get this discount created automatically. For now, I'm just going to run a global action because it is a bit simpler. And this will just generate the discount for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab the code snippet here. Perfect. Paste it in. Nope, not the whole thing. Okay. Perfect. So I've already hard-coded my shop ID. If you were doing this on the shop install, you could do connections.shopify.current to get your current connection. But because this is a global action, I need to specify the ID. I am going to go ahead and create this new discount. I'm going to modify this function ID. So if I go back to my CLI app, I'm going to go ahead and deploy my extension, so yarn deploy. So this will actually deploy my checkout UI extension and function to Shopify's infrastructure. And this will generate unique IDs. So you see an env file was added for me. I can go in here, and there we go. So this pre-purchase discount ID is my function ID. That's what I need to copy over into here. I can also go ahead if I want, might as well do things properly, create a new environment variable. So I can just call this function ID, paste that value in, and then in my global action, oh, I just added this to the sink too. That's not ideal. We will go function ID. And then I am just gonna, I noticed that I added this to the sync action. I don't want to do that. Let's add a new action. We'll call it create discount. There we go. That's a bit better. So now we're pulling in our function ID from an environment variable. Once again, similar to how we created our metafield, we're just using the Shopify API client to create a new discount. So I can go ahead and test this out using the API playground. And here we go. I am going to go ahead and, oh, I need to modify my connection. So I'm going to go to my connection. I need create discount scopes. So if I go to my discounts, because I'm now creating a discount, we'll get the right scope here. So this is just an example of editing your connection. I will go to my app. It will reinstall. And we're just at the finish line here. I'll create my discount, and we should be able to test this out in our checkout now. Perfect. Okay, now let's try our global action. Let's run that. Okay, success was true. Let's make sure it's true. Pre-purchase discount. Okay, so my discount is created. Now, because I've already deployed my extensions, things should work for me. If I go to my partner's dashboard, back to the app I created, into my extensions, now I need to actually place my UI extension into my checkout to test it out. So we can see that my function is already published. I need to do the same thing manually for my UI extension so I can create a new version. I will enable development store preview and publish it. And now back in my store, if I go to settings, checkout, and customize the current theme, I will add an app at the very bottom here, select my extension, and there it is. So now I can move it around my checkout, select what checkout page I want to add it to, and press save. So now if I go back to my store, let's test it out. Just go here. Perfect. I am going to empty my cart first. Continue shopping. I'll just give it a refresh. So first I'm going to test the case where I add my liquid snowboard. If I go buy it now, we see the discount is not applied and we're not showing our checkout UI extension because this is the product we're going to offer. So we know that that logic works. Let's go back to my cart. I'm going to go ahead and remove this guy. Let's add the hydrogen snowboard instead. Perfect. So I see my checkout extension now. I can press add. It's added in and the function is applied and we get that 25% off discount. So we've now built an admin app, full stack app. We have created a checkout UI extension as well as a function in 45 minutes or so. So that's fantastic. One other neat thing, we're just going to get to questions, but I do like to show this off. When you're doing function development, so if I go into my function in the extensions tab, I do get some traces of what the input and output is. So for example, I can see that my cart attribute was indeed set and we returned the discount as expected. This is particularly interesting. If I go back, let's try this one. So this is where we can see when I added that snowboard initially, that cart attribute wasn't set and we return an empty discount. So this is also useful when you're debugging functions. I just wanted to highlight that. But ultimately, this is the app. So that is how you can go about using Gadget to develop Shopify checkout extensions, both checkout UI extensions and functions. At this point, I've gone through the app. I'm going to go ahead and answer questions. So we had some pre-submitted questions, so this is fantastic. After this, we can open it up a little bit. So the first question, I've never worked with Shopify Functions. or checkout extensions? How would this be different from developing regular small custom apps? When it comes to functions, does Gadget support Rust or is it just JS? So I kind of walk through this. Gadget can be used to build your admin experience and pre-populate custom data for your functions, so those metafield values. It can also be useful to use custom Gadget models if you need to do some operations or data aggregation, for example, to pass values into that function as input. And once again, for functions, you can choose what language you want because you're kind of building it in the Shopify CLI right now. Anything that compiles down to WebAssembly is perfectly fine. I use JavaScript most of the time just because it's easier, but I know there's some people who really love working in Rust, so that's also a good option. Question 2. So multiple metafields, how we configure that? That is wonderful. I will flip over here. So this is my Tomo file. So if I had another metafield, it would look like this. This would, sure, let's use the same namespace. We could pass in like pre-purchase product 2, or maybe this is like our product image. So you can keep just defining additional metafields in this Tomo file. I think there is a limit of 5, I want to say, for checkout UI extensions. It could be 10. It's somewhere in the Shopify docs, but there's a limit as to how many metafields you can add as inputs. There's also actually a limit right now to how many extensions you can add to a single CLI app. For some reason, 5 is also sticking out, but those values are in the Shopify documentation. Instead of on press, can your pre-purchase item be automatically added to an order on checkout page? For example, free gift or bundled components. Yes, so for product bundles, I'll start there just because I know exactly how or where we're going for that. So for bundled components or like product bundles, Shopify, let's just find the API here. So Shopify does have a cart transform API that is going to be used if you click here in their docs. They actually have a product bundle preview that shows you how to create product bundles, natively in Shopify. It is mostly just metafield management, and then you use a cart transform function to kind of apply that to the checkout. So I will note that our bundle tutorial in Gadget doesn't use this yet, so it is a bit outdated. So I would definitely look at the Shopify tutorial for those. Can it be automatically added? I would say yes. So if I flip back over to my extension front end, I think if I just took this apply cart line change, if I maybe just tossed it in, like we have this actually use effect where we're querying data. If we were passing in a function or a product as a metafield, in this then, instead of setting it to a piece of React state, I imagine you could probably just do something like this, where you're applying the cart line change as part of your effect chain, or you could do a completely separate use effect or use callback hooked. But I do think if you just kind of placed it out of line with the kind of rest of the function, it should just, I think it would just automatically apply. I would have to test that out myself. I can go ahead and get back to you, whoever asked that question. But I imagine you can kind of just use the function provided by Shopify to add it right to the cart. The fourth question, when customers interact with functions or checkout extensions from the front end, does that impact Gadget billing or usage data at all? No, unless you're, no, not at all right now. So because they're hosted entirely on Shopify's infrastructure, it's all going to be on Shopify's side. So Gadget billing will only come into play when you're actually running your actions or reading from your database, the type of things that would happen with a normal admin app. Functions and checkout extensions do have, like I said, very restricted APIs. So you can actually make an external API call just out of the box. With checkout extensions, you do have to request Shopify's permission. So I imagine they're pretty stingy over what kind of API requests they're allowing right now. So the way to do that is if you're setting it to metafield, you're going to get charged for whatever processing is required to actually create that metafield value, make the request to Shopify to store that metafield. But once you set the metafield, you're kind of done from the Gadget perspective. Are there any other questions, Emma? Let me just flip back over here.
No, I think that's pretty much it. But if anybody does have a question that they want to submit right now, we do still have a couple minutes. Will there be a tutorial / webinar on branding API?
On the branding, okay, yeah. We weren't planning it, so not as of right now. Yeah, I mean, we could do something simple. So I've done a bit of custom branding on this checkout, obviously. This is actually just an implementation. Shopify has a little tutorial here, setting up checkout branding. Nope. They have there it is, advanced checkout branding. So they have an example here. This, as you can see somewhere, might look pretty similar to what I have. They've actually changed this up a little bit. I actually have the app that I used to create this branding and set it in Gadget. There we go, checkout branding. Let's see if it still is up and running. I have this code, so I actually have a forkable app. I can send it your way. So like if I do want to go green here and blue, refresh the page. I hope this works. There we go, green and blue. So I can go ahead and send this code to you. It does require use of the unstable API. So there is some kind of hijinks you need to go through when setting up your app. But yeah, this is pretty simple. I'm happy to share this code with anyone who wants it.
And Marius has asked, will this code / example be available? Are you talking about the checkout branding, or are you talking about like the general tutorial that Riley covered?
I can make them both available. That's not it. Yeah. The general, definitely. I can share all this code. I've got it all written down. I was obviously copying and pasting. So like I said, in our Gadget docs, don't have them open here. If we just go to guides. So the first half of the demo is right here. This is our, just the checkout UI bit. The functions bit is a bit custom, but I can go ahead and make that available as well. I'll probably toss it in our Discord to start. But if you we have your name, I'm happy to email it as well.
We do have a lot of tutorials just on the site in general, so I definitely encourage you to just go check that out. If you go, they're in the main nav under, I think it's templates, and yeah, you can play around with that. I'm not sure that we have a ton of checkout UI extensions specifically, but we're definitely working on those. They're also available in the blog, so just throughout the site, they're here and there.
Totally, and I will also, if there's no more questions. Yeah, no problem. Harry is doing a session, so that's the CTO of Gadget, founder of Gadget. It's his baby. Harry is going to do a session tomorrow on building AI apps, and we'll also have a new tutorial out soon about building a chatbot using some of the new AI features we've added to Gadget. So you're using LangChain and OpenAI to query for products. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days as well.
Absolutely. And in the next week during the hackathon, we'll have a few office hours here and there. So if you guys do need questions, I definitely encourage everybody to hop in the Discord, because we'll mostly be answering any sort of troubles or queries live there. And we have added an additional, I guess we can call it a training session with Mo next week. He's going to be doing 2 live app builds on Tuesday. So we'll make sure that we have the link to that in the follow-up email from this, and we'll share the recording as soon as we have it available. Thanks everyone for attending. Riley, anything else you want to mention before we drop?
No, yeah, thanks for attending. If you do have any questions about building extensions or functions or using Gadget to kind of populate this data, Discord is the best place. I'm in there. Our solutions engineers in there, as well as some of our engineers. So feel free to reach out at any time.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, folks.